so excited. We're the Hallmarkies podcast, and we are here for a special Christmas bonus episode. We're very excited. We're going to be talking all things Christmas Carol, and I'm Rachel. Amber's here.
Hello, everybody.
And our special guest, Alonso Duralde, is back on the podcast.
Hello.
Thank you so much. This is so exciting.
Thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I last talked to you in April.
Right.
So.
That March Madness bracket. Still mad about it.
Yeah. Well, we all knew that Winkle's Heart was going to win.
I was not informed, but I know better for next year now.
Yeah, you gotta always remember, in a popular vote, you gotta look at the voters.
True.
It was a very tricky tournament. I hope they work on that. But anyway, we're very excited. And so, yeah, we're talking Christmas Carol. Like, in case our guests don't know who you are and didn't listen to the previous episode, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about your book?
Sure. Well, I'm the film reviews editor at The Wrap. I co-host the Linoleum Knife podcast with my husband, Dave White. I'm also co-host of another podcast called Who Shot Ya? But for our purposes, I'm here because I literally wrote the book about Christmas movies, Have Yourself a Movie Little Christmas. And there's an entire, thank you, yes, on Rachel's shelf. I'm sure they're 24/7, 365. I devoted an entire chapter to Christmas Carol adaptations because there's so dang many of them.
Yeah. So, let's just dive in. So why do you think the story of Christmas Carol has remained so relevant for so long and so popular?
Well, I think it's at its base just kind of a perfect redemption story. Guy hates Christmas, guy is shown the error of his ways, guy loves Christmas. It's like you can't beat that as an arc. And I think that variations of that arc find their way into movies like It's a Wonderful Life and even Home Alone, where somebody gets a glimpse of what life might have been like or could be like if they don't reform themselves, and of course the fact that it's in the public domain makes it catnip because you can do it for free. So yeah, it's just, it is part of our kind of unconscious at this point, like, I don't know, the Paul Bunyan story. It's just this thing that we've had that's in our collective DNA from childhood onward. And, as we've seen, it loans itself to different eras and different circumstances and changing the genders and changing the locations. So, you can do your straight up Victorian England snowy streets, but you can set it in Hollywood, you can set it in the music industry, you can set it in, big business or a television network or wherever, and, the main beats survive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that what I like about it, at least, because I love Christmas Carol. Back in 2014, I reviewed like 35 versions on my blog.
Wow.
I spent the entire month of December reviewing, and it's really hard. There are some that are terrible, but they have to try really hard to be terrible. I don't know. I love stories about lost causes. And I think that that's what makes Christmas Carol great is that he seems like a lost cause to everybody. Right. And yet here there's this whole backstory to him. There's all this, and he is able to change. And I'd like to believe that anybody could change and repent and become a better person. And I think, so I don't know, it's just a story I've always loved. To me, the local theater does, several of them do Christmas Carol, and that's just like key to me to go to a live rendition of Christmas Carol every year. I love the story, and I don't know, it always makes me cry.
It's one of those stories where you see where the paths diverge, like at what point does he make which decision that takes him which way? And yeah, the idea that it's fixable, that it's reversible makes all the difference.
Yeah. What do you think, Amber, about Christmas Carol?
I like A Christmas Carol like most people. For me, growing up, I'm pretty sure the first exposure I had to A Christmas Carol was Scrooged. And that's been mainly with Bill Murray, that's what I know is A Christmas Carol. Like, obviously, I'm aware of the Albert Finney version, and I've seen it, and A Muppet's Christmas Carol, and all of the other TV adaptations. But, like, even more so than Dickens's A Christmas Carol, it's mostly always like, oh, and they've adapted Scrooged, which is just, like, I know it's...
I weep for your generation.
I know that's not like that's not even my generation. That's just me. But that's just like because it's the first thing that I remember being A Christmas Carol. So that's
Sure.
my touchstone, I guess. But
Yeah.
I definitely want to recommend, for anybody who's a fan of the book, there's a really great annotated version that they put out. It's a big hardcover, and they footnote every every unit of measurement and of money and like all the things that make no sense in 21st century America. They actually go through and translate what it means, all the little sort of Dickensy things at the moment, it's references that no one now would get, they go in and explain it to you. So it adds a whole extra level of like, oh, that's what that means, and that's why they're talking about bakeries being closed on Sunday or whatever. Like there's all those little things get explained that it really it enhances the experience. I think.
That sounds really cool. Yeah, people ought to read the book because it's a deeper story than just someone not being nice that you get in some of these versions, and that's fine. I'm not a hardcore traditionalist with adaptations of any really thing if they do it well and get the tone right. But clearly we'll see today that I'm not hardcore. But I don't know. I think there's a spirituality to the book that almost never gets translated into the movies, which is fine. But I do like reading the book, and I got some of those things.
And it's short.
Yeah, that's true. You can add to your Goodreads reading challenge.
Exactly.
Very easy.
Knock it off in an afternoon.
Yeah, that's right. So we're going to talk about 4 different TV versions. All of these at one time or another played on Hallmark. But I think
did A Diva's Christmas Carol ever play on Hallmark?
According to Wikipedia, it did, because I guess they changed some of the more saucy language when it played on Hallmark.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll accept that.
It was produced for VH1, so I don't think it was that saucy.
Yeah.
Maybe too hot for Hallmark.
Yeah. But I think the Carrie Fisher one was the only one that was like made for Hallmark. Yeah. So, but they all have played at one time or another, so they all count. And
well, I think Carol Christmas, the Tori Spelling one, was also Hallmark.
Was that? I was thinking it was Lifetime, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I didn't look that up.
I think it might be Lifetime, but yeah, don't quote me on that one either.
Yeah.
I'm like 95% I'm right, but it doesn't matter. This is not the point of this podcast.
Well, and we want to hear what you think of these, and also which versions are your favorite. Let us know in the comments section or on Twitter or wherever. Let us know. That'd be great. So let's start with the oldest one, and then we will go up. So, okay. So the oldest one that we talked about, that we're going to talk about, is called Ebby, and this is from 1995, and it stars Susan Lucci as the Scrooge character, Ebby Scrooge, which I think is a pretty solid name for a female Scrooge.
I've heard worse.
Yeah, it's not Erlinda.
Last year on Christmas, what was that? Christmas Melody or Christmas?
I don't know.
I don't know.
We don't talk about that movie anymore.
It was terrible. Yeah. So
Ebenita, I think, is the name they used in the Cicely Tyson one. That's like.
I mean, but that's at least better than Erlinda. Like that's like not a real name, but it's close to Ebenezer.
Fair enough.
Where did anyone even come up with Erlinda?
Yeah. So this take is all that she's running a department store, and she is just the Scrooge of the department store, and she has the Cratchit character is Robbie Cratchit, played by Wendy Crewson, and they kind of set it up as, in the beginning, they set it up, you get to meet all these different people that work for her, and they all kind of hate working for her. And the creative part that they did is they have all these different employees end up becoming the ghosts, which I thought was kind of clever.
No, yeah, that's a good one. I mean, it's as we'll see as we go on with these. Like, these movies are obviously made on more of a budget than a lot of your like, big screen Scrooges, but they kind of come up with sort of clever ways to sort of squeeze the most out of what they got. So yeah, we were introduced to different characters in the department store who, for one reason or another, are being terrorized by Ebby, and then they return as the ghost. This was a similar thing they did in the Henry Winkler An American Christmas Carol, which was also done for TV, which was set during the Depression, and it was basically all the ghosts were people that owed him money. Who he was like foreclosing on or whatever earlier in the film, and then they pop up in his unconscious as the spirits.
Yeah, I like that. Amber, what was your overall feeling about this movie?
I felt like this was it was basically, it felt to me like a straight adaptation of the movie, of the book. But like I feel like they used some of the same dialogue from the books. It felt very true, other than the fact that obviously it's set in modern times and Ebenezer is a lady. And then also, it was just, I really liked it.
Yeah, they really do. They have the benefactors, which then I don't think any of the other of these movies have, which was cool. And even Jacob Marley at a certain point she says, I was too busy to care. And then he says, mankind was my business. The common good was my business. When I was alive, I kept my eyes closed, but now I am forced to see such misery. And so the whole idea here is that Jacob is her like business partner, and they were really like unscrupulous, as as always this is the case, but anyway, running the department store. But he had just died 1 year before in this version.
Like in the book. Or actually, no, it's 7 years, I guess, in the book.
Okay.
Rachel, if you've watched a lot of Christmas carols in a row, like I did, I'm sure you start kind of keeping a tally. Okay, are the benefactors in there? Are ignorance and want in there? Are, like, is the people in the lighthouse, the poor couple who were thrilled to hear he's dead? Like, there's these sort of secondary figures throughout the story that some adaptations work in and some don't, or they pick and choose one. So it's kind of funny to keep a running, scoreboard after a while. That this was a groundbreaking movie because this is the first Scrooge is a horrible career woman movie.
Okay.
Which began a whole subgenre of Scrooge as a horrible career woman, including the Cicely Tyson one and the Diva's Christmas Carol, which we'll talk about, and several other ones. But this one, this was first across the finish line.
Yeah, that's true. It's a they're breaking the glass ceiling of
exactly
Christmas Carol adaptations. Yeah. This one they really do use quite a bit from the book, and the lighthouse people, that's extremely rare. Hardly any adaptations have that.
Like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
There's a part in I think Christmas Present where Scrooge, like they show him like people who are under like horrible circumstances but are still celebrating Christmas and have the spirit of Christmas inside them, and they go to this lighthouse that's like super out in the middle of nowhere, and these people are alone and like having to keep the lighthouse lit, and even they manage to like muster together some little celebration. It's a little passing moment that like Rachel said, most adaptations skip, but every so often you'll see it. Ignorance and want, the Christmas Present shows him at the very end of his trip as being like these horrible children that Scrooge is helping to keep alive. They very rarely show up, but every so often they do.
Yeah. The only ones I can think of that have the lighthouse is the Patrick Stewart version and the Robert Zemeckis version. The Robert Zemeckis version, I know people hate it, but it is very accurate to the book. Except for
to the point where they drag in lines like the thing about the bakeries on Sunday, where it's like, unless you have read that annotated version, you're like, what are they even talking about?
Yeah, it's true.
The carriage chase scene, however, that's pure Zemeckis.
That's
not in the original work.
That's true. Okay, so I kind of I thought it was sort of clever that they talk about the three ghosts as three appointments, and she says, I can't take them all at once. Set up a conference call.
I died at a conference call. I laughed out loud.
You gotta love a 90s movie where somebody whips out their cell phone and it's like the size of a brick.
Yeah, and I kind of liked that she goes like through the TV with like this giant, with the remote in order to get to the things, and he's talking to his boss on the phone, and he's like, and you think I was tough? Funny. That was good. So in Christmas Past, they have the two perfume girls from earlier as the dual past.
Right.
This is Jennifer Clement and Nicole Parker as these ghosts. I don't know, Amber, what do you think of them?
Fine. I don't know. I wasn't like super blown away by any of the ghosts.
Uh-huh.
They kind of have one joke each. Like Christmas Past is like, hey, they're doo-wop singers because it's the past. Get it? You know?
Yeah.
And then like you have the gift wrapping person as the ghost of Christmas Present because it's the presents and the wrapping of the present. And then Future is just like what, the store detective who's kind of a jerk or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
one thing they do that's kind of interesting is they have the same woman playing Fran and the daughter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which was different. And they have that the whole like concept is she meets her man Paul at this party, and she goes to the party because her sister is like got a month left, and she she comes back from the party and she's had toxemia, she's miscarried the baby, and she thinks that this was her fault, and that's kind of what sends her into a spiral of becoming this horrible person because she feels this guilt. What do you think of that, Alonso?
Well, I mean, it's a bit of a switch. I think, you know, the thing about changing the gender of Scrooge, I think sometimes they maybe kind of go overboard in the, well, how would a woman be in this, you know? And so the idea is, whereas Scrooge doesn't like Fred because Scrooge's sister Fan dies in childbirth and he blames Fred for it, they kind of reverse it around to where she blames herself, and you know, like that's somehow more feminine. I don't know. It's not terrible, you know, and I do appreciate an adaptation that doesn't feel completely shackled to the material, where they can kind of create their own sort of sub universe of how they would tell the story. Like, for example, the famous Alistair Sim movie in the 50s. Adds in a thing where Scrooge and Marley both work for Fezziwig and they take the company from him. Mm-hmm. And that adds a little something to the story, given that Scrooge and Fezziwig's daughter had a thing and then they break up. So, like, you know, I'm okay with people, you know, playing with the material a little, as long as they do something interesting. And I think most of the additions and subtractions here are pretty smart. And the fact that Molly Parker plays the sister/niece she's a terrific actress. She has done a lot of cool Canadian indies. She was on House of Cards. Like she's had a really good career.
She's Mrs. Robinson in Lost in Space.
Oh right, yes, I keep forgetting that. Indeed, yes.
How dare you forget that?
I watched the pilot and I really liked it, and like most other Netflix shows, I haven't had time to go back.
You need to add a plug-in so you can watch things at 2 times speed.
I guess that's the trick, because I love me some Parker Posey, so I have no excuse.
She's so great.
That's what I hear.
Okay, sorry, we got distracted.
No, you're fine. They do that here though. In this one, they have a scene where Jake and Abby, I guess, are taking the company away from the original Dobsons.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So
they bring back that idea.
Yeah, which is pretty interesting. And I thought it was kind of fun that obviously it's such a pun, but the presence is and it's like the gift wrapping lady that you've seen from earlier. And I liked Lorena Gale as this ghost. I thought she was pretty fun. And she kind of complained about her bonus being really lame. And I mean, I think that what maybe hurts this version, at least for me, is I thought that Paul was such a dweeb. I never into him at all.
Yeah, well.
Also,
if you're gonna have, I feel like a lot of the times, if you're gonna have Paul, make it so that Paul and Belle, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You're gonna, and it's gonna be a made-for-TV Hallmark movie. Let her get together with Paul at the end. Don't give him his own life. What's wrong with you?
Well, there's that scene with her in lingerie and him in the towel. I was like, I don't know.
This is how you know was not actually
not my Hallmark. Or,
yeah. Scandal. No, it was funny. I just thought he was kind of didn't do it for me. And they do kind of the typical. You see, Franny and the hanging out. You find out that Franny's gonna have a baby.
I like the ones where they make fun of Ebenezer, though. And they didn't do that here. I was like, come on.
Yeah.
Don't pull your punches.
But they did actually show Jacob Marley dying in this one, which is kind of interesting. You know, he's like literally there at the table. They've just kind of signed, I don't know, they've just made this deal. And he's like, we gotta work, we gotta schedule things, and plop, he's gone. But and then for future, it's this guy Luther, who is like the security guard that she scolds at the beginning of the movie because she spots somebody shoplifting, he doesn't. She's like, why aren't you doing your job? And he's like, he was already playing the crypt keeper, and I don't know, it was really kind of funny and weird. But he's the future, and you basically see her, that nobody's coming to the funeral, the whole typical thing. She's so lonely.
I did totally love, though, that the gossipy nurses are the ones who are like, nobody cares, and they were like taking off bedding, even though it wasn't like Ebenezer's bedding. I like that.
Yeah, that's true.
Good callback.
And you see that Tiny Tim has died, and
what was Tiny Tim's malady in this?
It was, I think it's.
I know there's a whole thing about how he wants to skate, so he's sort of like, debilitated in some vague fashion that is never elaborated.
Yeah, I can't remember. I did like his song, though. I thought that was kind of sweet. He sings "Angels We've Heard on High."
It's a falsetto, that kid.
Yeah, for sure. And we do see ignorance and poverty come out of. They have an ignorance and poverty in this one come out of the presents, and they're kind of jumping all around as President is leaving.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a little much. Like, I don't think ignorance and poverty are for me. I don't think we should cut them from the show because I think they're weird. Just saying.
It's a little something for the fans of the book at home. Yeah.
I guess.
And she gets hit by a car. That's how she dies in this one. And in the future, and she says, I know I can make things better by being better. And the thing is I think with all of these, they do not do Crazy Scrooge right. Like, I don't know, none of them are like, because I love like when he wakes up, Alistair Simpson's so great in doing this, like freaking out the
Happy Scrooge.
Yeah, Happy Scrooge, Crazy Scrooge are called. I love that. I think it's so fun, and none of these really do that. And then, I don't know, especially the Tori Spelling. We'll talk about that. I was like, that's such a missed opportunity. Like, they should be freaking out.
Yeah, I like the Albert Finney one where he's going nuts, and the movie reprises like every musical number that they had in the whole movie, and it's just like 20 minutes of singing and dancing and jumping around and bell choirs and pipers and tumblers and everything. It's nuts.
Yeah. So out of these four, where would you rank this one?
I'll rank this second.
Okay, good. I think I'll do third for me on this one.
That is so funny because I was super tempted, and I'm very conflicted about whether to make it second or third. So you guys, I think we're going to agree a lot. But I'm actually just going to put this one third for a very specific reason, and we'll talk about it later.
Okay, good. Okay, well, let's
keep it tuned in.
Yes. All right. Well, let's talk about A Diva's Christmas Carol. So this is 2000. This was for VH1, and the whole the whole take on this one is that Scrooge is a pop star, like kind of a Whitney Houston wannabe kind of pop star or whatever. And Diva, played by Vanessa Williams, and her name is Ebony, which I think is pretty solid. That's a good name.
It's a really good name.
Her last name is Scrooge, but she never uses it.
Yeah, because why would you when you could just be Ebony?
Yeah. So Amber, what are your overall thoughts on this one?
I I love this one. This is single-handedly one of the best Christmas songs of all time, The Heart of Christmas. Like, I cannot find it somewhere to download, but like, I think I like this song more than All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah, hot take.
Words.
I'm not saying it's better. I just think I like it more.
Right.
Sure.
So yeah, and when this movie came out, this was like in the height of VH1. So it's amazing. And you know, like I watched every like VH1 Behind the Music show at that time. So I just spent my whole life basically watching VH1 and MTV and The Box in the year 2000. So this movie was just like perfect for me at this time. I love Vanessa Williams. I love this movie.
Yeah.
Long story short, I love it.
So Alonso, do you think that Vanessa Williams makes a convincing diva?
Yeah. There are moments where you kind of wonder, does she know the camera's on? Like, you know, no, I have no idea. She could be nice as pie for all I know. But yeah, she's very convincing as a high stress, like, you know, needy, high maintenance diva. No, this is one of my favorite adaptations, you know, TV or otherwise. It's really smart. They really thought out how to take the skeleton of this story and put it in a very specific milieu. And the fact that it was VH1 producing it and that they make The Ghost of Christmas Future an episode of Behind the Music is
yes.
Yeah.
It's one of like the best ideas anybody's ever had in a Christmas Carol movie. You know, and so yeah, I think it's a treat. It's smart and it hits all the emotional notes. And you got Kathy Griffin. Like, what more do you want?
Yeah, no, they really do a good job. I really think it's clever, and I think it actually holds up relatively well, like as far as just even, like obviously it's sort of cheesy special effects and stuff, but I kind of like that for this kind of movie. Mm-hmm. I don't know, I just I get a kick out of it. I think it's really, really fun. And there is a heart to it, I think, that they get that heart of Christmas Carol. And the only flaw I have with this one is it is a good song, The Heart of Christmas, but all the musical numbers are too long.
The Heart of Christmas can never be too long.
Like fast forward. I suspect
that was probably a VH1 thing where they're like they didn't want to stray too far from their, you know, mission as a network or whatever, so they had to like make sure to up the musical count. It'll be curious to see, you know, in a way, this is, I think, going to date itself faster than the Victorian ones because, you know, a kid who is 15 now, like, probably doesn't know what Behind the Music was, like, doesn't remember when that was that zeitgeist moment. So it may be that this is one that we'll treasure, you know, for the rest of our lives. But you show it to young people, they're like, who are these, what, you know. But that's a risk you always run when you modernize a property like this.
Yeah, so they have the Marley character. Dick Marley character is a Marley former partner that died from a drug overdose, and they have like pretty gnarly where she takes off her head. I think that's pretty good for this kind of movie. Like, I think it's pretty good, and I like.
There's some of those Marleys where he's got the kerchief wrapped around his head and he takes it off and the jaw just drops.
Right. And I like kind of how they were able to, it was kind of clever the way they integrated the chains into her wardrobe in a way that fit the style. I thought pretty good. And so that was pretty fun.
That's Chili from TLC, by the way.
Yeah, that's Chili from TLC. Which, every time I watch this now, it makes me really sad because I think of Left Eye.
I know.
Which is like legitimately, I like anytime I see any of the girls from TLC, but especially this where she's playing like a type too young pop star. I'm just like,
and she's not just playing Marley; she's playing Marley Jacob.
Yeah.
Well, and I think they do a pretty good job of like making this version of Scrooge, her like transition seems pretty like understandable. Mm-hmm. Like if you had this abusive father, you've gone to foster care, and the idea like she lives in like constant fear of of losing everything and being poor. Like she, you know, in regular version, you know, you fear the world too much, and that is this character.
Yeah, the thing to remember about Scrooge is he's not a monster. He is the product of his time and of his surroundings, and you know, Dickens is sort of that's part of what makes this story work so well. Is you have one ghost showing him everything that's led up to this moment, one ghost showing him all the repercussions of his behavior in the right now, and then the other one showing him where it's going to lead to in the future. And so, yeah, I mean, the best Scrooges are the most compassionately painted ones, where they're not just mean and selfish. Like, we understand why, we know where that comes from, we understand the life circumstances, whether it's, you know, being shipped off to school or being worried about money or whatever, that molds them into the person they become. And it also gives you that idea that they can still be fixed, you know, that it's not too late for them to be redeemed.
Yeah. An unusual choice they make in this one is they have the Bell character and the Cratchit character is basically the same character, where you have this guy, Bob, that she used to have a relationship with, that's her manager, and Bob has this child who is sick, and he's married, and I think it is kind of unusual that in this kind of a movie, you'd expect for them to somehow get together in the end, but because he's married, like, they can't really do that. So she just ends up helping him and helping his son. And yeah. So anyway, that's a little bit different.
I think maybe with these stories that they run the risk of, if Scrooge gets everything at the end, including his or her lost love, and maybe that colors is this all this happening because he or she's truly trying to change their life, or they're just trying to win this person back? Whereas if you take the lost love off the table and makes it clear that it's not about winning them back, then I think it makes it sort of a more pure redemption, because it's not like there's this immediate reward involved for becoming a better person.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and so Kathy Griffin is the ghost of A Christmas Past, and she is really funny. And last year I had to show Tom Ford all his Christmases. That was pretty funny. And she says, well, mate, these aren't real people. It's like Los Angeles. That was pretty fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we also do find out in the past that her other partner, Terry, is on Skid Row doing terrible because she had been sued. Like, she tried to do a new version of their band Desire, and she got sued by Ebony for it, and so now she's doing really bad. So that was different. You have Present is played by John Taylor, and he's like this party rocker dude guy. And I don't know, what do you think of him, Amber?
I think he's pretty fun. I really liked it. I mean, for real, the thing, all of my perceptions are colored by like 12-year-old, 13-year-old me, who was obsessed with VH1. So really, all of the like musical notes and all that stuff really struck a chord with me. Look at what I'm doing. But yeah, and so all of the, like, I just was feeling it. I just always, like, even rewatching this, I was feeling it. So I like him. Yeah. Long story short, I like him.
You get to see Bob quit in that scene in The Present, and I also like, she says, I really have to cut it off with Anne Heche. What's fun at a party isn't a relationship. That's pretty good. Enough. He's a little annoying, but I think he's supposed to be. And then Future is, like you said, Alonso, is this behind the music documentary, which I think was so clever and so good. And you have various executives and people who work for her and stuff, and one of them says she's worth 10 times more dead than alive. And that seems to be the thing that really gets Anne gets her. And at the beginning, she says they're probably talking about Celine Dion. No.
I'm sure Amber was very excited to see Brian McKnight.
I was.
So yeah, and she has a niece who she sees in there as well, Olivia, and then she wakes up and she is able to. There's also this corrupt accountant who's like stealing all of her money, And so there's that whole angle too. And overall, it's just really fun. It's really entertaining. It's funny. I think it's pretty well written. And so, yeah, I really like this one a lot. So it would be my favorite, my number one.
Same here.
Yeah.
You guys are never going to believe this, but it is also my number one.
It's tough. I do love Carrie Fisher, but it's just really good. So
it takes me back. Like this and NSYNC's Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays are like my youth Christmas in a little time capsule.
All right. Well, let's talk about A Carol Christmas. This was 2003. And this take is Tori Spelling plays this woman named Carol, who is this diva talk show host. And she is just bossing everybody around, making everybody terrible. And the reason why she learned to be this way was because of her aunt, Marla. And basically taught her to be ruthless and that nobody was going to hand her anything. And it's just kind of this, I don't know. It's basically like the worst version of a staged mom kind of thing that you could have. And so there's also like two kind of Bob Cratchits in this. There's this guy played by Michael Landis, who's kind of like a showrunner type guy, and then there's the woman named, I forgot to write down her name, but I think it's like Roberta or something like that.
Roberta Timmons.
Yeah, who has a daughter.
Because she refers to her daughter as Tiny Timmons. Yeah.
Oh, nice. And her husband is wanting to take the daughter back, and so there's all this custody, and also like her Tori Spelling's nieces, they bring her these presents, and she's just like, why did he give me a rock? Like. The paperweight. No, it's so funny. And she's like, he didn't work very hard on this. But the assistant, Roberta, gets like good presents and like is always filling in for Carol. And so Jacob Marley is Aunt Marla. And so this kind of unique because usually Marley isn't related to Scrooge. Mm-hmm. But I actually think that the Barbie version of the Christmas Carol actually does this exact same thing better. And I think it's a little more creative.
I'm so embarrassed that I've seen the Barbie Christmas Carol, but it was book research.
The animation is terrible, but I actually think it does some clever things. And
yes, no. In that one, the Scrooge character is like a high-strung actress who has, so devoted herself to her career under the thumb of her stage mom or aunt or whatever. Yeah. That's why she's so horrible. And that's kind of the same deal on this one. People. This is one where you mention to people, and the eye rolling begins immediately. They're like, Tori Spelling, But she's an underrated comic actress. Like, if you watched her VH1 show, whatever it was called, I've forgotten now, or in the movie Trick, like, she's actually, I think, really funny. And she can do comedy, she can do like sort of barbed dialogue when it's sort of aimed at her the right way. And the aunt is played by the great Dinah Manoff as a character actor. She was in Ordinary People and a bunch of other stuff. She's Lee Grant's daughter. Most
importantly, she's Marnie in Grease.
She is Marnie. You're right. Yes, indeed, she is in Grease. There are a ton of. This one's actually really well cast. I mean, you got the Shat, you got Gary Coleman. Who plays? Nina Shamasco as Roberta Timmons.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually people would be surprised if they actually watched it, that it's fairly straightforward. Like, aside from making her a talk show host, like, it pretty much goes through the beats of the Christmas Carol. Like,
totally.
Diva's Christmas Carol takes way more risks.
Yeah, this one is pretty much, you're right. Once you get past the sort of initial switch of the place, it does pretty much hit the beats as you would expect. But I think it earns its sentiment. I like the fact that Tiny Tim the Lily, I think is her name, that we feel for her because she's in the middle of this ugly custody battle, and not because she has some unspecified disease, which is the Dickens thing. I find Tiny Tim to be the trickiest part to pull off in almost any Scrooge adaptation, because it's such an easy way to milk tears from the audience and to like sort of just kind of indulge in really sappy sentimentality. But if you do it right, it's like tears you don't have to feel guilty about. Like Scrooged, for example, for whatever other issues I might have with it, the fact that you have this kid who's been traumatized, who has not spoken at all for years, that he says "God bless us, everyone." It's just that he's saying anything that is the moving moment. Like that's a moment that lands. That's a moment that actually works. And I think that the Tiny Tim in this movie, it's easier to empathize with her, and it feels less manipulative than, oh, look, she has a limp,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that Tiny Tim and the Belle character are probably the two hardest.
True.
And I'm not a huge fan of the Belle character in this one. Jason Brooks is his name, played by John Joyce. He's just like a paragon of virtue, so it makes him really lame. He like runs a soup kitchen. He's like, good grief.
Put the halo right on him.
Yeah, that's right. But I did love the scene at the beginning when Aunt Marla takes the girls, makes her be Mary, and she's like, "You're not going to be doing myrrh. Like, what is this? This is a joke." Pretty funny. You get scenes with her dating this guy, and Marla tells her, always keep them waiting, which I think is probably really bad advice, I would think, in show business, but what do I know? And so Past is Gary Coleman, and I think he's fine in this. I think he's perfectly cute and fun.
He is. He's in on the joke. It's not a joke that's made at his expense.
Right. You do find out that Aunt Marla is making deals on the side to like help her, and that she's like compromising her show, that like eventually Carol's show is going to be like doing basically Jerry Springer kind of things. So
like
there's like a redneck Santa at the beginning. Okay. And then present is William Shatner. The big thing of his is that he only speaks in cliches, which is kind of funny. I like that.
Yeah, and he's playing a Dr. Phil type, so that works.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I mean, really, you just put William Shatner on the screen, you let him do his thing, boom, you nailed it.
Wind him up and let him go.
Yeah, and that's where you get the whole scene with the girl getting the ex-husband trying to take the Tiny Tim girl from her, and you see John at the soup kitchen, and and then Future is limo driver, played by James Cromwell, which is so random. Like, what is he doing in this movie?
He's a workhorse, that guy.
Yeah,
meet his rate, and he's there on time.
Yeah, evidently. I was like, who is that? I know that. That person, and so I had to look it up, and it's uncredited. So that's maybe I got
that was his Scrooge.
Yeah. There's a funny clip with what her show has become, and it's all people wanting to say "I hate you" on Christmas. Their family, which is hilarious. But I do think that I just feel like, especially with Tori Spelling, the Crazy Scrooge, the reborn Scrooge, should have been way more over the top. But it's just played like really sweet and sincere, which I guess is fine. But I think it could have been like, when you hear that, oh, there's William Shatner and Gary Coleman and Tori Spelling in a movie, you expect it to be a little bit more over the top, I think, than it actually is.
I think people are afraid of that level of emotion, frankly. Like they're okay with making Scrooge despicable, but then to do that 360 or 180 rather, and have the Scrooge character sort of just explode with goodness and generosity. I think that's the kind of thing where in old movies they were just afraid to, like, yeah, what the heck, take the brakes off. But now people are more skittish about it. But yeah, they should, it's Charles Dickens, he's not famous for the subtlety. You might as well just like shoot the works.
Yeah, I think so. So Amber, where do you have this one ranked?
This is my last place.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not your guys' last place?
No, this is actually my last place also, but I actually like it fine. I like it. Like I said, it's kind of hard to make a version of Christmas Carol that I don't like, but some have succeeded. But this one I think is fine. I enjoy it just fine, but is my least favorite of the four.
I think it's my third, because I think that there are a lot of really good ideas in it, and I like the performances. And like I said, it's one of my favorite, as written, Tiny Tims.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that makes sense. Perfect. Okay, our last one is our true Hallmark film, and this is It's Christmas Carol. From 2012, yes. From is there exclamation point? That's funny.
I think there is.
So this one
there should be if there isn't one.
So this one has Emmanuel Vega as our Scrooge character, named Carol, and she's running this publishing house. And Emmanuel Vega has done some Hallmark movies. She's been a number, but she's not the star of the film. Obviously. Carrie Fisher is the star of the film, and I just think it's so funny that they were like, okay, we've got Carrie Fisher. She's going to be Jacob Marley. She's going to be past. She's going to be present. She's going to be future. She's going to do everything, which I'm fine with because she's great. And they even kind of work it into the script a little bit where they're like, that Charles Dickens, he could what did they say? Like he was a bit much in painting all these spirits or something like that. They work a line into the script about that. But yeah, so Emmanuel Vega, she runs this publishing house, and she started out really loving books, but has become like a total just like, you only worry about profits. You don't worry about the quality of the books at all. And she has this girl, Tanya, who there's kind of two Cratchit characters in this. There's this girl, Tanya, who tries to pitch her this great novel that she read, and she immediately fires her. And then there's this assistant of hers named Kendra, who wants to get a transfer to Europe, to London, to be with her boyfriend. And she really idolizes Carol. And there's that kind of relationship going on too. Then you also, so that's kind of where it starts. I don't know. Amber, what's your overall thoughts on this one?
I think this one's really fun. And for me, one of my favorite things that it does is, shockingly, it feels the most Hallmark of all of these. So I probably like it more than for its Hallmarkness than for its, Dickensness. But, one of my favorite things in this whole movie is the very beginning where she walks by a bell ringer and she stops and is digging in her purse, and you think oh, she's going to give to the bell ringer, so she's a good person. And then she just, boom, totally doesn't. And it's so amazing because you're like, whoa, well, this is true villainy here. Hallmark says if you don't give to a bell ringer, you're a bad person. It's so great. And then at the end, obviously, she does give money to the bell ringer. But there are so many points in this movie that feel like Hallmark and touch on Hallmark things that I think that's why it speaks to me more than the other ones.
Yeah, I think that's true. I guess that's probably true in me. And I love Carrie Fisher. I just love her so much. I got to have my picture taken with her at Comic-Con 1 year. And I just love her so much. So I guess I maybe am a bit biased in that way. But yeah, she's pretty funny. I think when she sees the bell ring Santa, she's like, try again next time. Yeah.
She's so oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I agree with you to the extent that this is the Hallmarkiest of them all, and that's kind of my problem with it. In that it just feels so cheap, And it's not that you don't have to have a million locations or crazy special effects, even though this is a ghost story and it's a period piece and all these other things, but as much as I adore Carrie Fisher and I think she's brilliant, it just feels like such a cheat to be well, we could pay Carrie Fisher or we could have 4 performers. So here's what we're going to do. And it always kind of sticks in my craw. So It's like, yes, I like her. I'm glad she's in it, but I wish like they had also cast the other ghosts, and if they could only afford her, I don't know. So much of the movie feels like it's all set in one house, as I recall. It's been a while since I've seen this one, but I don't know. There's just something about it that just feels so on a budget that it just kind of takes me out of it. But there are some fun things, and you're right. She gets the Scrooginess right. But yeah, there are times where I'm okay with the sort of Hallmark cheapness, where it's all the action is conscribed to about 3, town blocks, and that's fine, But this one, it starts to show for me.
That's fair. Like, and not to bring up the Barbie movie again, but it's a similar. The Barbie Christmas Carol, I really like the fact that the Cratchit character in that movie actually becomes Scrooge in future, and she sees that this assistant has become like her, and it's like kind of this thing. And I feel like you get a little bit of that with this Kendra character in here, and I kind of like that, that like she sees her. Because I think that would be kind of like, it's one thing to, I don't know, to do something, but then like when you see like your nieces and nephews doing it, you're like, oh shoot, that's embarrassing.
It's the idea like if Marley transformed Scrooge, for Scrooge to see he or she having transformed somebody else really kind of brings it home. It's like, this is the error of my ways.
Yeah. So I think that was pretty good. I do also like the line that she says that she says, bigger is better. And she says, Scrooge says, give me one example where bigger isn't better. Carrie Fisher's like, tumors, cockroaches, holes in the wall. I thought that was funny. And they do have one, it's a little self-aware. There's a little thing about it being 1985. And she's like, it's not Star Wars. It's not. That was kind of funny. But the whole romance, like I do think that this Belle character is very difficult because this guy, the old flame Ben, he's kind of lame. He's not my favorite. But I do love the Viva Revolution with Carson Kressley and the other people that are working for her that are planning this like revolution where they're going to make their own company and everything like that. And I think that they're kind of fun. I don't know.
They're fun. They're a fun little plot. What do you feel?
No, I'm not. It's like what you guys are saying that like Carol Christmas is your fourth, but you still like it. I'm not dead set against this movie. It just is not my favorite.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. And you did get a point where Kendra says, "I thought I wasn't supposed to plan my life around a man. And she says back to her, you're planning your life with your man." So that's kind of good. And Kendra is, I think, the only one there at her funeral in future. Also a whole subplot with her mother, who has like Alzheimer's, I think, and she's just gotten somebody to take care of her. But she never goes and visits her, so there's all that going on, and then you get a whole line where she says all about her mother. She says all she ever did was work, and Carrie Fisher says, but she didn't have a choice. You do. Clearly it, because it's just I do like the scene with the closets. That's pretty funny.
Yeah,
with all the closets, and I also like the fact that she says Scrooge was a smart businessman who was bullied into being a sentimental spendthrift. That's pretty good.
Nobody ever talks about like how long does it take for Scrooge to go broke.
I also like when Carrie says, "You think everyone who works for you is happy? I have to capture this look of total cluelessness."
Yeah, Carrie Fisher in this whole movie, she has so many fun, like, one-liners.
She probably wrote most of them.
Yeah, which is, I'm not mad.
Sure, no. That's a plus.
And, and then you get her coming back to Tanya's and, having read the novel, especially I found time to read this whole novel, and agreeing to publish it, and she's going to give them all benefits, and it's going to be amazing. And she agrees to give Kendra the transfer, and they've stopped the Viva Revolution. And so, yeah, I really like this one. It's one of my favorite Hallmark movies. And maybe I give it too much credit for just loving Carrie Fisher so much. But yeah, I have this at number 2 for my ranking. What about you, Amber?
I also have it at number 2 because, she gets a love at the end.
Yeah, that's true.
And I'm all about the love. I know Alonso's like, oh, it cheapens the change.
No.
I don't need to worry about that.
Look, that's a theory. There's a lot of different ways to tell this story, and you can include the love if you want the love. It is my number 4, but I will say y'all have convinced me I will look at it again this year.
Yes.
Guys, this was what this whole thing was for.
This is so great. So, okay. So, yeah. So, I have, for my ranking, I have Diva's Christmas Carol at number 1. I have It's Christmas Carol at number 2. I have Ebby at 3. And I have Carol Christmas at 4. And, Amber, what was your ranking?
My ranking was identical to yours.
Just on the same page. This is so weird.
It's like we've been doing this for a while.
Yeah. So, Alonso, what was your ranking?
So I think I was Diva number 1, and then Ebby at 2, Carol at 3, Carol Christmas at 3, and It's Christmas Carol at 4.
Yeah, very good. Great. Well, this was really fun. I really do love A Christmas Carol, and I'll put a link down if anyone wants to check out my Scrooge Month reviews I did a couple of years ago. I had a lot of fun with that, and it's just it's a really great story, and it's one of the great stories ever written.
There are a lot of really terrible animated versions for some reason.
Believe me,
although Mr. Magoo is still great.
Like, yeah, Mr. Magoo is really good, and the Barbie one is like one of the better, and that's not.
It's better than the All Dogs Go to Heaven one, or the Tim
gosh.
Curry one, or the Nicolas Cage one.
The All Dogs Go to Heaven one, there's like an evil sorceress who's going to poison the water, and that's how that gets worked into.
Well, and there's also like the dogs raising money for a kid's operation or something. And it's like,
It's so bad.
parents, shouldn't they be raising money? What's even happening here?
It's so bad. Yeah, it's really bad. So anyway, but check that out and let me know what you think. And this is so much fun to have you on, Alonso. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's a delight. And, y'all do extraordinary work week in and week out. You keep up with an astonishing amount of content, and I'm always gobsmacked by that. But thank you for having me on. I know we have a very long Christmas season to plod through together, so I look forward to seeing what you guys have to say about this stuff.
Yeah. So it's gonna be interesting.
To say the least.
If you see us kind of go into some of those dark places on Twitter,
Just know it's Rachel, not me, because I will always be happy.
It's true. Amber is way better at pretending to like a movie than I am.
Yeah, talk to me 36 Christmas movies from now, Amber. We'll just see.
So, well, great. Well, why don't you tell people how they can contact you on social media?
Oh, sure.
Your book.
I'm at Duralde, Aduralde on Twitter, at Linoleumcast on Instagram. I'm the only Alonso Duralde on Earth, so I'm super easy to find in most places. Linoleum Life is the podcast, and the book is Have Yourself a Movie, Little Christmas.
Oh, great. And we'll have all that in the description section, so check it out. And Amber, where can people find you?
As always, I'm at Amber Brainwaves on Twitter, and that's it. And I do want to just say, if you like A Christmas Carol and you feel like you want to read a book, check out The Christmas Company by Elyse Murray from Hallmark Publishing.
Yeah.
We have a podcast with her where we interviewed her and talked about the book. And if you haven't listened to that yet, that'll be down in the description below as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of fun. So there you go. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews on iTunes and on YouTube. So check that out. And make sure you're following the podcast at Home Reviews Pod on Instagram and Twitter. And if you can put in your reviews on iTunes, we really appreciate it. And thanks again.
Give them a 5-star review, people.
Yes, please.
They work hard for this.
If you leave a 5-star review within the entire month of December, you will be entered into a drawing to win a copy of Alonso Duralde's Have a Movie Little Christmas.
Oh, well, there you go. Even better. I didn't even know they were going to do that, and I'm telling you to go leave a 5-star review. So, do it!
Wow. Thank you so much. And Merry Christmas, everybody. And yeah, God bless us, everyone, right?
Boom.
All right. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, you guys. Thanks.